Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're going to try to keep the ducks in frame while we talk about a really important topic for anyone raising ducks: common leg and wing issues. Ducks may seem sturdy when you watch them waddling around the yard, but their feet, legs, and wings are actually some of their most vulnerable parts. Understanding these issues, how to recognize them, how to prevent them, and how to treat them can make a big difference in keeping your flock healthy and happy. So stick with us while we talk about exactly what you're looking for and how to treat it. And sometimes knowing that you can't treat it is all you can do. I mean, sometimes knowing that there's nothing you can do is the best you can do. So, why do leg and wing health matter? Well, chicken farmers sometimes grab birds by the legs. Don't do that with ducks. Don't do it. You shouldn't do it with chickens either, but really don't do it with ducks. Their legs just are not built to handle that kind of pressure. Ducks are dense and heavy for their size, so we're going over here. Ducks are dense and heavy for their size, so what you don't want to do is be grabbing them by those legs. Grabbing them that way can cause serious injury. Ducks can also hurt themselves when running from predators and from people. Sudden bursts of speed, especially on slippery or uneven ground, can lead to sprains or fractures. Nutrition is going to play a big role too. Niacin deficient diets are a common cause of leg issues in ducklings specifically, since niacin is critical for healthy joint and bone development. On the other hand, rations that are too high in calcium can harm growing ducks, potentially causing kidney damage to the bones later. So it's almost like a catch-22, right? Good nutrition, but too much of a good thing is going to hurt them. And unfortunately for ducks, the things that take the most damage for ducks are their legs and their wings. And a duck that can't walk won't survive. Okay? So let's talk about some of the problems you might have with your ducks and a goat in the way. But some of the problems you might have when it comes to the feet, legs, and wings. Let's start by talking about bumblefoot, because bumblefoot is a really common issue, it seems like. I don't have to deal with very often. I've had to deal with like twice in our years of raising birds. But it's surprisingly common, and it's also surprisingly serious. Okay? So let's start with bumblefoot and go from there. This is what happens when the foot pads become cracked and infected. It's most common in adult ducks that spend a lot of time on hard, dry surfaces like concrete or gravel or wire or mesh or anything like that. But it can show up if ducks spend too much time walking or lying around on wet, dirty bedding. Okay? Duck, 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 I know. The ducks are loud. So basically, what happens when they're laying in the wet bedding? How do they end up with bumblefoot from that? Basically, what happens is the water mixes with the uric acid in the duck droppings and it forms ammonium hydroxide. Basically, it's like a weak lye solution. Over time, this causes burning ulcers on the feet, which then open the door to infection. Okay? So wet bedding is a problem. So how do you prevent bumblefoot? Well, avoid hard flooring or wire where your ducks spend a lot of their time. Okay? You want to avoid that. You also want to layer hard areas with deep, cushy, dry litter. Dry litter is incredibly important for keeping your birds healthy and safe. You want to keep your ducks in an area where they have access to grassy terrain when possible, so that they're not walking on hard surfaces that can damage their feet. You want to keep your housing clean and dry. Moisture is the enemy when it comes to foot health. And I know ducks are wet, okay? Ducks are so wet. They're always spilling water. They're always making a mess. But it's really important, like really important, that you make sure that they're as dry as you can possibly make them, okay? Because bumblefoot's no joke. I know everyone says, well, I deal with it all the time. First of all, you shouldn't be dealing with it all the time, okay? They shouldn't be dealing with it all the time. But if you are, your ducks need help. So if you do spot the early signs of bumblefoot, which include swelling, redness, or limping, quick action can help. Mild cases might be managed by cleaning, disinfecting, bandaging, but more advanced cases sometimes require veterinary care. Yeah, sometimes you can dig out the infection yourself. Sometimes it's going to require a vet, and that's not fun. But you might need surgery and you might need antibiotics. Some people, in an extreme case of bumblefoot that they can't treat themselves, do opt to euthanize the animal humanely because, let's be honest, if you keep ducks as livestock, probably you're not going to take that duck to a vet and spend $300 on surgery and medication when you only spent $25 on the duck to start and he's meant to feed your family, right? Probably not going to do that. So that's okay. That's okay. Just if you do have to euthanize, do it humanely. Be nice. Okay? So, moving on from bumblefoot, let's talk about toenail care. Because yes, ducks have toenails. I had an argument with somebody about ducks having toenails. They do have toenails. I know it doesn't always look like they do because they have webbed feet, but they have toenails. And foot health also means taking care of the nails. Overgrown nails can affect your duck's gait, making them waddle awkward, or it can hurt when they walk, and it's just not fun for them. So try to keep those trimmed back. Keep an eye on toenail length and trim as needed. If the nails are clear, you can actually see where the blood vessel called the quick ends. However, if you have ducks like we do, which are the cayugas, they have black nails, so you can't really see. So you're going to trim carefully to avoid hitting that quick, but especially when you're talking about these darker skinned birds, like these guys, you definitely want to make sure that you're having a little bit of flour or cornstarch or something to dip that nail in, just in case you accidentally clip a little too far. A little bit of bleeding might happen. It's not the biggest deal in the world. Dip the toe in some flour or some cornstarch, and you should be okay. There's also something called styptic powder, but you might not have that on hand. But you need something, just in case. Now let's talk about some wing issues, because wing issues are a huge problem in ducks if they don't get the right nutrition, especially when they're young. So one of the wing issues you might encounter is called twisted wing or angel wing. It's most commonly referred to as angel wing, but I have heard it called twisted wing. This is where the primary feathers on one or both the wings grow outward instead of laying flat against the body. While it's mostly cosmetic, it can affect flight ability. And in the extreme cases, in very extreme cases, it can actually lead to damage to the wing. Twisted wing can be inherited, yes, but often it's linked to diets too high in protein during the duckling phase. Okay, that's why I talk a lot about making sure you're feeding the right food for the animals you've got, because something like a turkey requires more in the way of protein. There's a couple of chickens having a tantrum. But something like a turkey requires more in the way of protein than a duck. And if the duck gets as much protein as a turkey, then the duck could end up with angel wing. Okay, usually it's a protein problem. If caught early, you can correct it by gently folding the wing into the right position and taping it there with masking tape or vet wrap. A couple of key points here. Don't tape too tightly because you don't want to be cutting off circulation, just enough to hold the wing in place as it grows. And you want to keep the tape on for about 2 weeks before removing it. Also, when you are wrapping the bird with the vet wrap or tape, I prefer vet wrap, by the way, but if you are wrapping a bird for angel wing, the thing you want to make sure you're not doing, don't cover the vent. Sometimes when people are wrapping, they get a little over-enthusiastic in the wrapping and they wrap almost the whole body and they end up covering the duck's butt and then he can't poop properly. Don't cover the vent. Okay? Most ducks with twisted wing can still fly, though maybe not quite as well as ducks without the condition. Ducks with extreme cases will not be able to fly and they won't be able to use the wing very well. So if you do see it starting, cut back on the protein and treat as quickly as possible. Now let's talk about clipping the wings of ducks. When and how? Some domestic duck breeds are talented flyers, and if you don't want your ducks wandering off, like your call ducks, wing clipping might keep them on the ground. Now, this is a little bit different than removing what's called the pinion, which is a permanent thing. Okay, that ends up actually, there's a way to make sure your ducks never fly that involves actually amputating part of the wing. Don't do that. It's painful, it's rude, you don't need to do that. But wing clipping, especially only on one side, can really help keep your birds exactly where they're supposed to be. There's a lot of you hanging out here right now. So, clipping. You definitely want an assistant. It is easier to clip wings if you have a buddy. Okay? Have that assistant gently hold the duck and stretch one wing out fully. Extend it all the way. You don't have to pull hard, just extend that wing. Try having your assistant tuck the duck's head under their arm and even put a light towel over the eyes just to make them think it's nighttime. Birds, when they think it's nighttime, they go, bed. So it just makes it easier to handle them. Use sharp scissors to cut the 8th or 9th long primary feathers on just one wing, trimming them back to the level of the smaller secondary feathers. Avoid cutting through blood-engorged pin feathers, especially during a molt. This can cause heavy bleeding and it hurts. Okay? So watch those feathers. Do not cut the blood-engorged ones. You can see if there's blood in the quick of that feather or not. You're only cutting those really long flight feathers, those long primary feathers. Only the long ones. Okay? Just those, 8 or 9 of them, however many your duck has. Just that one line of super long feathers. Cut them back to the secondary line of feathers. Only do one wing. If you've never clipped wings before, you might want to have someone show you how. Okay? I had my friend show me how because she had done it before and I hadn't. So I had her show me. Now I can do it if I need to. I don't do it these days. Where are they going to go? They just wander around. They just wander around annoying the horse and the turkey. So they're not going to go anywhere. But remember, once you've done the wing clipping, they do eventually molt out those feathers and grow them back. So you'll need to repeat the process after the annual molt, after those new feathers have grown in, because your birds are going to be able to fly again. Okay? So after they've molted, just grab them, clip them again, they'll stay put. But only on one side. Because if you do it on both sides, they can still get an appropriate amount of lift. If you do it only on one side, they'll be crooked and they'll fall down. And that's what you want. You don't want them taking off. So, why do some people not clip wings? I just mentioned we don't do it anymore. Not everyone chooses to clip their ducks' wings. Some raisers believe in being able to fly gives those ducks a better chance of escaping predators. That's one of the reasons we have free-range ducks. We want them to be able to get out of the way. Not that these guys can fly. They're too chunky. Our ducks, too chunky. But the truth is, at least in the long term, you might end up being able to just stop doing it. Why do I say that? Because once domestic ducks know your farm is a safe, consistent source of food and shelter, most are happy to stick around even if they can fly. So while you might have to clip that first or second season, after your ducks are like, this is where they give me snacks. This is where the good pond is. This is where I can sit on the deck and poop all day. I'm looking at you, ducks. That's what they do with their afternoons. Once they know that, they do tend to stick around. Okay? They don't necessarily home in exactly the same way chickens do, but they feel safe and they get used to you and their property. So they're more likely to stick around. So whether you clip or not is going to be entirely up to you. Stop pecking my shoe. I've got a chicken pecking my shoe. But whether you clip or not is an entirely personal decision. For some people, it's what works best for their farm. Other people, it does not. As long as you're only clipping those flight feathers and you're not touching the pin feathers, it's actually not painful. Okay? Your duck's going to be annoyed because you've kind of trapped them under your arm, but it's not painful. So they're okay. So, in summary, leg and wing health is more than just preventing injuries. It's about creating an environment where your ducks can thrive. That means safe housing, balanced nutrition, regular observation, and quick action if something seems off. The legs and the wings are really the necessary components to your duck. That and that bill. So make sure you take care of those wings and those legs. Okay? Then you'll have your ducks happy and healthy for many years. That's about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. What's the most unusual leg or wing issue you've seen in your own flock? Let me know in the comments. We'll see you tomorrow.